Hey ladies, welcome to the Lifestyle MD podcast. Are you a woman physician or healthcare provider who is struggling to prioritize your health and fitness? Are you afraid that putting your needs first makes you selfish and it gets in the way of your roles as a doctor, a wife, or a mom? Are you tired of starting and stopping fitness programs only to find yourself falling back into old self-sabotaging habits? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this podcast is for you. I am your host, Dr. Angela, a duly board-certified internal medicine pediatrics physician, wife, mom, stepmom, and your fit lifestyle coach. This podcast will move you from running on empty and wishing you are in better health to pouring from a full cup and living your best fit life indefinitely. All right, let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Angela, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the very first episode of my new podcast, The Lifestyle MD. I thought it would only be appropriate for the first episode to give you a little introduction to myself, your host, and tell you a little bit more about the podcast. If you are a woman doctor, healthcare provider, a mom, a wife, someone who's responsible for aging parents, or a dedicated auntie who is struggling to prioritize your well-being, then this podcast is for you. If you are someone who's been putting off exercise, struggling to eat healthy, getting too little sleep, or simply exerting all of your energy to take care of other people and leaving nothing for yourself, then this podcast is really for you. And if you're a doctor mom, this podcast is especially for you. After my intro and by the end of this episode, you'll both know a little bit more about me and why I started this podcast and how it ties to my bigger goals in terms of my business and health coaching and being a healthcare provider. And finally, I'll give you a little preview of upcoming episodes. All right, I'm very excited, so let's get started. The truth is, my story does not begin with me becoming a doctor, a wife, or a mom. It actually started when I was an engineer over 20 years ago in my first career. I made a decision to improve my health right out of college because I was grossly overweight and I was diagnosed with high cholesterol. Problems that ran in my family, but I really didn't have any personal knowledge about what to do about those issues or how to solve them. In my initial attempt to improve my health, I set my sights on training for a marathon. Now, I definitely lost weight. I looked a lot healthier, but my cholesterol numbers didn't really change very much. I felt like I was doing better, but I knew that there was more that I could do. It was right around this time, about 2 years into my career as an engineer, that I decided to return to my original passion of wanting to become a physician. I had put that goal off at the end of college because I quite frankly didn't think that I was going to get into medical school. But I had a much better shot at getting an engineering job at a really good company, which will currently remain nameless. Nonetheless, I wasn't satisfied and I didn't really feel like I was going to achieve my purpose if I stayed where I was. Once I finally committed to the journey of becoming a physician, I thought that this would be my opportunity to really finally understand what it took to be healthy. I also thought it would be my job to make sure that other people understood it or got it too. Disappointingly, there was little or no emphasis on actual health or nutrition, or other than obvious things like telling people not to smoke or drink alcohol, avoid fast food, and exercise regularly in most of my medical training. And ironically, as I moved through each of the phases of training, from medical student to intern, resident, and first year attending, it appeared that self-neglect was both an expectation and worn as a badge of honor. The unstated expectation is that we would have time for ourselves once we finished our training. Well, first of all, that's not true. And second of all, I didn't have time to wait. I already told you that medicine was my second career, so my biological clock was ticking. And not the one you're thinking of. The one that tells you that it's going to get increasingly difficult to manage your weight, put on muscle, and increase your endurance as menopause creeps in closer. Well, fortunately, it did not take me long to figure out that there were deficits in medical education and that I was going to need to dig a little further to figure some things out for myself. During the first part of medical school, one of my classmates graciously introduced me to a book called The China Study, which discussed the health benefits of plant-based eating. Near the end of medical school, when I continued to run, I met my husband at that time, and together we became CrossFitters, and we adapted a more paleo diet. Early in residency, I continued to dabble in running and CrossFit, but by the end of residency, I decided to live out my lifelong dream to become a bodybuilder, taking to the stage for the very first time in 2015. I gave talks about healthy living to community groups. I started a resident group to encourage others of us to become healthy. And while I still hadn't quite figured out the whole how to be healthy and spend time on yourself and do all the things, I still enjoyed helping other people along the path to becoming a healthier version of themselves, just like I was. It was definitely tough to try to balance eating healthy meals and getting regular exercise while I was a resident, but it became even more challenging after I got married. I became a stepmom, and then I gave birth to my first son a couple years out of residency, and then I had a couple of major health challenges. All of these changes seemed to come in rapid succession, and I just really didn't have time to adapt and didn't really know how to integrate all of these new healthy behaviors into the new complexities of my life as a attending, a mom, a wife, all of the things. But hey, what better time to compete in a bodybuilding show again? So after I got healthy from having 2 bouts of sepsis, not 1, 2, the first was much more severe than the first, I decided that I wanted to do another bodybuilding show, except this time I was going to compete in figure instead of bikini, which was the category that I'd wanted to do all along. So I was really quite not totally fulfilled. I didn't have that in my system yet. So I found a great coach. We set out on the journey for me to start training for a show. And then my very first show in figure got canceled because of COVID. Now, I had already invested a lot of time and energy into preparation at this point. I was not interested in giving up and just waiting again till next year. Again, time is not my friend. So I just wrote it out, continued training, kind of went into this kind of maintenance mode with my coach until I was finally able to find a show where I could compete with mask on somewhere around the midpoint of the pandemic. The first bodybuilding show went okay. I placed 3rd. I was pretty happy with my performance, but decided to do a second show to see if I could fine-tune things a little bit. This one took me down to Maryland. Everything went great. It was so much fun. I was there with my coach. I ended up placing 1st in this competition, earning me my pro card in figure. I should have been on cloud 9 at this point. Not only had I realized my dream of becoming a bodybuilder, but I earned a professional card, something that I did not even anticipate was possible. It wasn't even actually my goal, to tell you the truth. At a time where I should have been putting weight on post-competition and starting to incorporate more foods back into my diet, I actually found it very difficult to eat anything. And sometimes I couldn't even drink. I ended up losing more weight post-competition. And it took at least 6 months for anyone to actually take me seriously in healthcare. So I went through many specialists. I had an extensive workup. And really after about 2 years of going through this exhausting cycle of trying to figure out what was wrong with me, no one ever actually got to the bottom of it. The only thing I can chalk it up to was stress, prolonged competition training. You may not already know this, but bodybuilding competition is actually not good for your body. Unfortunately, this is also the same time that my body decided it was time to quit. My health completely hit rock bottom. I went from being able to train and, eat at a regular schedule, having lots of energy and doing all the things that I enjoy doing, as well as keeping up with my responsibilities at work and at home, to almost being completely incapacitated. I put up with this for a good 6 months before I decided to throw the towel in and take a leave of absence from work. I had dropped another 10 pounds since my competition unintentionally because I couldn't eat. In fact, I couldn't even sometimes keep food down. I like to say that this was my wake-up call. After years and years of literally trying to do it all and thinking that I could and that I had to strive for perfection in all of it, my career, my personal life, my family, my marriage, my fitness, all of it. Finally, it just came to an abrupt halt, and I had no choice but to stop. I don't want to bore you with all the details, but some of the things I experienced were daily migraines, relentless fatigue, inability to eat from presumed delayed intestinal motility. I experienced dramatic weight loss. I couldn't exercise basically ever, let alone stay awake after I came home from work most days. I was in and out of the emergency department, specialty offices. I tried elimination diets, fasting. I even resorted to getting IV fluid infusions because I had a hard time staying hydrated. I became hopeless, feeling that there was literally nothing that I could do to control the situation. So I just let go and I prayed that God would heal me, or at least help me find the answers, or find someone that would help me get the answer. Recovery didn't happen overnight, but it was during my time away from clinical duties that I was able to go on a personal healing journey. I came to terms with the fact that my daily actions were not reflecting my priorities. I also came to terms with the fact that well-being was not something that I had been prioritizing, and I needed to move it to the top of the list. So this brings me to the reason that I started this podcast in the first place, and why I started a health coaching business for physician women. I know that there are a lot of women out there, especially women doctors, working moms, busy professional women, who are struggling to prioritize themselves, and consequently their health and their fitness is suffering. And if it hasn't already suffered, they're already on a crash course to feeling terrible. I know it's true because I hear these struggles from patients, colleagues, friends, and clients all the time. And I really don't want anyone else to struggle unnecessarily anymore. My niche happens to be coaching women doctors because that's my perspective, but I truly believe that anyone can stand to benefit from the lessons that I hope to share in this podcast. In future episodes, I hope to help you break the cycle of self-neglect, learn sustainable strategies to improve your nutrition, your fitness, and all the elements of well-being that are necessary to achieve that. I'm going to do this by sharing my coaching insights. I'll hopefully bring on fellow doctors and health and fitness experts to share some of their strategies in the future. And maybe if possible, I can bring on guests for live coaching calls. It is my hope that you will be able to transform your own health and your fitness, and then share this with your patients, your colleagues, your friends, and of course your family. Once you've learned how to sustainably have good health and fitness and to engage in regular self-care, it will be impossible for you to keep that knowledge to yourself. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Angela, in my very first episode of the Lifestyle MD. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and share with someone else who may benefit from it too. See you next time. This has been another episode of the Lifestyle MD. Special thank you to Lou Musa for the show theme music, created with Bree Photography and makeup by Janae for the cover photo. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you haven't already, please subscribe today and share with another woman doctor who may benefit. You may also follow me on Instagram at Angela Lifestyle MD. I am Dr. Angela. Thank you for joining me today.